Hello, this is Joe Yuhan here with another ribcage foam rolling strategy, this time for the front side. And so similar to the lateral posterior ribcage rolling, front side rolling has an amazing capacity to release even the most stubborn range of motion losses in the hips, in the pelvis, low back, but even in the neck and the shoulders. The anterior can do that too, but with the added bonus of improving breathing, volume, and efficiency, but also, of course, stability and posture. But before we get into those details, I'm going to show you the exercise. Two things we're going to do. The first one, vertical on the sternum bone, which is our breastbone right down the middle. First thing we do, we get a medium density roller, at least 12 inches long. Medium is better than the firm density because it's just a sensitive area to lay on. We just want the pressure. So we're going to come down on the roll, right down the middle, just below the collarbones. So here I am. And the first thing I can do is just lay here, relax, and breathe. And just letting my body weight sink into the sternum and letting my sternum relax into my rib cage. That can be a simple breathing strategy, but another stubborn area are the joints of the rib to the sternum, and to access that, I'm gonna roll 1 inch to one side, and I'm really stiff on my left, so I'm 1 inch over to the left. I'm gonna sink down and breathe. And if I still feel like there's some stubbornness there, I can then add lower trunk rotation, both legs side to side with my knees bent. Here's my side view. Position just below my collarbones. I'm sinking in. If I want to go offset, I can go 1 inch to either side. And then adding lower trunk rotation, which is a very gait-specific movement strategy. That's the sternum. Really important, like we talked about, for breathing, posture, and core stability, which we'll talk more about. The second strategy, anterior diaphragm. So the diaphragm, the dome, the top of the diaphragm lives just below the breast, a little bit below the nipple. While there's still plenty of rib cage, you don't want to be quite this low. We're going to go right here, right below the logo here, with the roll horizontal. So very similar. I'm going to go into the horizontal position. Now, if I go up here, that's pretty tender, so I want to just soften and let my head drape over. And if this is bothersome at all to your low back, you want to do just a little bit of an ab contraction. And same thing, we can do a long breath, trying to sink in. After doing that, we can also add the gait-specific lower trunk rotation, where I'm keeping my upper body and shoulders straight down, but I'm letting my lower body and lower spine rotate a little bit. That's going to selectively add movement, but also some pressure on the front of the rib cage. Those are the two strategies that go really well for a lot of people with the lateral and the posterior backside rotational rolling that we did last time. So let's talk now about why this is important. And so similarly to those other strategies, the reason that we think foam rolling pressure to the rib cage is so useful is because of fascial layering. Specifically, the internal fascia of the rib cage, or the endothoracic fascia, is continuous throughout the body. So it connects to shoulders, head, neck, and then down below, it connects to the diaphragm, and then the diaphragm connects into abdomen and into pelvis. So the implication is stiffness, fascial stiffness deep in our rib cage can impact shoulder mobility, pelvis, hip mobility, and everything down the leg. So I've had huge gains with people, really stubborn stuff, finding subtle stiffness in the rib cage doing these techniques. And so I didn't think it was possible without really aggravating somebody to roll on the side of the ribs. Then we did and had some great outcomes. Then I started having clients actually playing with the front. I'm like, okay, like if this is doable, this too is doable. And there's an added benefit to rolling the front, and that has to do with breathing and posture. And so one of the things that we can use, as we talked about in the last video, are mobility pretests. So mobility pretest may be shoulder over head, it may be hugging knee to your chest, different things that you can do to test the efficacy or the impact of the rib cage stiffness on something else in your body. So I recommend that before trying these other new strategies, but there's another test that we can do, and that's breathing. And so a nice pre-test is to simply stand or sit upright and take a deep breath. And get sort of a qualitative measure of how much air you can get into this chamber and how much air you can get out. Because fascial stiffness or even bony stiffness in the rib cage can restrict our full volume. And so I deal with a lot of runners, especially, they're not slouchy. More often than not, they're too tall. They're too extended, and the front of the ribs and the diaphragm and the sternum are stuck in an elevated position. This is a functional inhale position because when we inhale, everything expands. When we exhale, everything contracts and drops down. Well, so many of us, myself included, tend to get stuck in inhalation, so we don't get as much air out. And so if we can't empty that chamber, we can't fill it fully either. So my experience has been, is if we can use these techniques to soften that sternum down and to get the rib forward upward flare of the lower ribs down, better breathing depth, better diaphragm function. Lastly, a flared rib cage tends to correlate with a weaker core. And the reason is, in the efficient state, we want everything in neutral. And so if I am stuck in an elevated state, then there's too much stretch and inhibition to my abdomen if I am stuck in this elevated position. And so by softening my sternum down and by softening my anterior rib cage and diaphragm down to neutral, I get a better functioning core and a more neutral posture. So, as with the previous exercises, consult your physician, especially if you're a little bit older. If you have any bone density issues, this is not rolling, it's not bouncing or heavy pressure, but it is direct pressure of your body weight on a firm object. So be careful with these techniques, but don't be afraid if you are a healthy runner to put some pressure on your ribs. Experiment with that and see what great gains you can get in mobility, in your breath, and even in your running efficiency with this strategy. Good luck.